video, I'm going to show you how to use the 3D modelling tools in Aspire to create this. So when I first started here at Vectric many years ago, I had absolutely zero experience of any 3D modelling package. And so I had to watch the video tutorials and ultimately just practiced my way through it. And since then, I've created tons of projects that use the 3D modelling tools. I actually found it's not as hard as I initially thought it was. So now that I know how, I've been able to put all of that experience together into one fundamental project that we're going to cover all of the modelling tools in Aspire. So let's jump into the software and take a look at that. So let's start by creating a new file. Okay, so initially I'm going to start my job with a width of 8 inches, a height of 11 inches, and we're going to go with a thickness of 1/2 inch in here. I'm going to set my modelling resolution. It's important that you take a look at this, but we're going to set it to very high. Okay, so we've got 3 options here: standard, high, very high. We're going to go very high. That just means we're going to maximize the amount of pixels that we're using within our 8x11 job space to give us a real good quality model. Okay then, so once we're happy with that, we can go ahead and press OK. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to bring in some artwork that's going to enable us to create our vectors to create our bird. Okay, so we're going to go and import a bitmap. Now I've got this beautiful illustration of a bird that I managed to get from Pixabay, and I'll link you to where that is in the description. And we're going to use this. So we're going to take that and we're going to open it, and here it is. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to size it. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually really trying to kind of maximize the amount of space we've got within our job, just to really kind of fill that out. Okay, so we've got that over there. Let's just nudge it over to the left, bring it down a little bit, maybe even increase that a little bit more. So you can see I'm really trying to just fill that space. We've got all of those pixels to use up, so I want to try and really kind of maximize the amount of space that we've got there. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Okay, so with that, what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to click to kind of accept that, and there is our image. Okay, so tackling your first 3D modeling project is a little bit like a chicken and egg situation. You need to know the sorts of vectors you need to create in order for you to use the different modelling tools. So what I do recommend before you approach any 3D modelling project is that you take a look at the videos that represent how to create basic shapes. So all of these, along with the 2-rail sweep and the extrude tool, and each one of those will show you what you need to do in order to create different sorts of shapes and the vectors that you need. So for example, all of these modelling tools that we've got on the top row here, these enable us to create shapes where we basically pull out a shape, and each one of these is a different profile, where we pull out a profile from a closed shape or a closed vector. Okay, so we know that we need closed vectors for these. In terms of a 2-rail sweep, okay, so 2-rail sweep requires us to have 2 vectors that act as rails, where we create a cross-section vector that runs in between those rails. Okay, so you need a few more vectors in order for you to create a 2-rail sweep. And then in terms of the extrude tool, what we do is we have a profile vector, and a profile will then sweep or extrude along a center line vector, a single kind of line, which is kind of displayed in this graphic here. Okay, so totally recommend you take the time to take a look at the videos for all of these different tools, and it will really give you a good feel for the sorts of shapes you need to create for the different tools that you are using. Now, for this project, we are mostly going to be using this tool here. Okay, so this one is the create round shape, whereby we're going to look at pulling out the rounded profile from a closed vector. Okay, so the hint is in the name there, what I just said, closed vectors. Okay, so this is where we start to think about the sorts of vectors we want to create for the bird. Okay, so we're going to create a series of round blobs in order for us to build up the shapes. Okay, so we're going to start by drawing a vector that represents the main bulk shape of our bird. Okay, and so to do that, what I'm going to do is we're going to go into the polyline tool, and you can use other tools as well. For example, you could look at using the freehand drawing tool if that's your jam. I love the polyline tool, so I'm going to kind of work this way. But again, as long as you can create nice smooth vectors, ultimately it doesn't matter how you get there. Ultimately the crux is getting a nice smooth vector. Okay, so I'm going to start this around here. Okay, so I'm going to click here, and what I'm doing is I'm actually going to sort of pinpoint areas where I know I'm going to put curves in. Okay, now I could use the curve mode in here, but I'm naturally used to just drawing straight lines, where I then use the powerful node editing tools afterwards in order for us to then go in and kind of edit those. Now, also, whilst I'm here, I'm actually just going to switch off smart snapping using this icon here. When I'm drawing organic shapes, I feel that it's unnecessary for me to see all of those helpful points that I may want to snap to as I'm drawing an organic shape. Okay, and so I'm just going to do this, and I'm just going to close that off by clicking on the start point there. Okay, so I'm just going to close that, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to edit this. I'm going to press N on the keyboard to go into node edit mode, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just highlight all of those nodes just using my left mouse key and dragging a box around them, and I'm just going to press S. Okay, and that's just going to smooth all of those, at which point then I can then have greater control, where I can then look at adjusting the handles here to really control the overall shape of the part that I want. Okay, now the best results that you're going to get with creating 3D models is by having vectors that have minimal points. Okay, so you don't want lots and lots and lots of dots here. You want nice long smooth curves, especially with natural forms anyway. Okay, and then over here I could essentially delete this point here by right clicking and deleting that, and then I can then pull on this handle to give me a nice elongated curve. Pull on this handle too to really control the curve, maybe bring it down a little bit, and then just nudge that handle up, and you can see I've got a really nice smooth shape. Okay, you can see I've got nothing here, so what I should do is I should look really at kind of bringing that in ever so slightly, pull this handle down, and then perhaps we'll just nudge that one over like so. Okay, so you can see we've got quite a basic shape here, just a nice rounded shape there. Right click, sorry, left click just to come out, right click to come out of node edit, and you can see we've got a nice smooth shape here. Now when you are creating models that are based on organic items, animals, nature, that sort of thing, you've got to draw your vectors up into lots of little parts to ultimately build up your shape. So for example, I'm going to look at drawing in a vector for the eye, one for the pupil. I'm also going to draw a vector that represents this kind of brow shape here, one for the beak. I'm also going to create this kind of cheek. There's a bit of a cheek there, we can see that from the shading, so we need to represent that as well. Okay, we want to do one for the wing. Probably want to break that up as well, so that this top portion has its own separate vector as well. One for the tail, and then a series of vectors that represent each of the joins that we've got on the leg and on the claws. So there's going to be lots of different shapes, and you just got to think about it like the actual structure of the bird and how it's built up by the bones. So obviously you're going to have like one here, one there, and then a claw, and that's what we need to do. We need to create those vectors that represent all of those little parts, and then when we come to create those shapes, we'll build it into a real nice looking realistic part. Okay, so What we're going to do is we're going to we'll just speed along now, creating all of the vectors for the bird, and then we'll kind of regroup and then just have a look at what we've done. So to start here, I'm just using the polyline tool just to roughly draw out all of the shapes that we just spoke about there, the joins for all of the different parts. And then going from there, I then finesse those vectors where I use the node editing tools to smooth out all of those harsh points to give us some really nice curves, and just twiddling with those handles to ensure that I get nice looking vectors. Okay, so in total there I spent about 10 minutes drawing them and kind of finessing all of those vectors. So to complete the bird, all I need to do now is figure out the eye vectors, do a little bit of detail on the beak, and then a bit of detailing on the wing as well. So we're going to start with the eye, so we're just going to use a simple draw circle tool, okay, so like that, and then we're just going to go back in with the pupil. Perfect, that's that. Now for the beak, because we are looking at the beak here, if I just click on that, also it's a good point to actually mention, if you wanted to alter the fading of your bitmap, right click on the bitmap itself, go to appearance, and then here you can adjust the fade in here. So here you can see we've got the beak, but we've also got this overlap. Now when you've got an overlap like this, the best thing to do is use the basic vector that covers the whole part and take a copy of that, okay, and then what you want to do is you want to paste it and then go into node edit mode, and then we're just going to just tweak the bottom portion. That way we know that when we come to actually come and create the top portion that's going to be on top of the main beak shape, the top curve remains the same, so it's going to sit on that really nicely there. Same for the wing over here, okay, so it's just right click to get out of node edit mode, take that, we're just going to create a copy of it, we're also going to paste it, and then we're going to press N on the keyboard to node edit that, in which case I'm actually going to delete those points at the bottom over here, don't need those. It's this line is what I'm interested in. So at this stage what I should do is I should actually reduce that appearance so we can see this a little more clearly. Okay, so we're just going to take that into node edit mode, and I'm roughly just going to pinpoint the sort of areas that I want to kind of follow along. So something like that. Again, you'll find that a lot of vector drawing, whether that's 3D modeling or you are just drawing vectors, requires a lot of tweaking. So I'm quite a perfectionist. I'm constantly in and out making those small adjustments. Okay then, so I'm pretty much happy with what we've got there. So that's for the main body of the bird. We've got everything that we need there to model the bird. Before we get into the modeling, we're now going to look at the leaf in the background, or the stem, the plant. And we're going to look at how we're going to create the vectors for that. So in terms of the actual stem, so again, let's just go back in here and we're just going to adjust the appearance there so we can take a look at that. So we've got a stem here, it goes quite thick here and then it gets thinner as it gets to the top. We've got leaves as well, like so. And typically for leaves, for stems, I tend to use the 2-rail sweep. So we're going to look at creating a vector that represents the left side of the stem, a vector that represents the right side of the stem. And I'm going to draw in my own rounded cross section. We're going to look at how we can sweep that cross section between the 2 rails. Same applies for the leaves as well. So I'm going to have a vector that represents one side of the leaf, a vector that represents the other side of the leaf, and then I'm going to look at creating a cross section that looks as though we are looking through the leaf, and you'll see how we kind of create a shape for that. That's going to give us a really nice leaf effect. It always works well in the leafy natural projects that I've done before. Okay, so again, what we're going to do is I'm just going to whiz through the vector creation and ensuring that you can see that, but we'll just speed it up a little bit and then we'll talk about what we've got throughout the drawing. So here I'm just drawing again using the polyline tools to get my rough lines in place. We're creating a series of open vectors here to use with the two rail sweep, and I'm just drawing those lines, and then what I'll do afterwards is I'll go in and polish them up real nice with the node editing tools just to get the right curvature to match the actual bitmap itself. Okay, so just got a few more edits to make, so I'll just change the shape of the stem at the bottom here, so we just want to follow that along the image that we've got. Pull on that handle there, bring that out a little, maybe pull that one back in ever slightly. We'll take this one and again just smooth all of those nodes. Let's bring that in, bring that handle in, that's coming around nicely there. Put that over here, kind of finish that, pull on that handle again. That's looking pretty nice. Okay, right then, so we're almost there with the vectors. Now you take a look at this leaf over here. Okay, so this leaf obviously has been eaten away by a very hungry caterpillar, and so when you're creating models where you kind of cut things away, the best way to do it is to actually create the model as if it was fully there, which is why I've drew these rails here. I intend to create a full leaf, but then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a shape where we're essentially going to cookie cut it out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the polyline tool, and I'm just going to kind of just follow the shape of the leaf on the top along here. Again, it's very rough. I'm not following it exactly to the bitmap itself, but we're pretty close. Okay, so just going to smooth all of those and then just do a final little tweak over here with those handles to ensure we've got the correct curvature. Okay, so something like that. Maybe pull that down ever slightly. And over here we'll just pull that handle up, pull that up, bring that over. That's pretty good. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and I'm actually going to copy them. Okay, and then I'm just going to use our trusty scissor tool like so, and that's going to give us this shape here, and then we're actually just going to look at closing that off. You see, let's close that off at the bottom there. I'm going to right click and paste in our original rails. So we're going to create our shape with our rails, with our cross section, which we're going to create in a second. Then we're going to crop it back to this closed shape that we've got here. So you'll see that later on when we get to the modelling stage. Right then, so we're going to look at creating a few cross sections, and then I'm going to look at just importing some cross sections that I've created earlier. The process is pretty much the same, so I'll show you one and then we'll just bring in some extras. Okay, so for the round stem, really simple. We're just going to look at creating a half circle. Okay, so kind of roughly this sort of size here. We're going to create another vector that's just going to be a little bit smaller, like so. Then we're going to go into the node edit mode. And I only need half the circle, so I'm actually going to delete this span, D to delete that span there. Same over here, so D to delete, D to delete. And the idea is we're going to sweep this half circle between this vector and this vector. And then as it gets to the end, well, when we get to the top over here, we're going to look at using a smaller cross section over here. In terms of the leaves, so my favourite trick for the leaves is to draw an ellipse. Okay, we're just going to roughly draw an ellipse out, something like this, and then we're just going to go and right click to come out into node edit mode. We're going to delete those bottom spans here, and then I'm actually going to change this into a straight point, so I uncheck the smooth point. And then what I'm going to do is take that middle point and just nudge it down with my down arrow keys. And I'm going to take these two handles and I'm just going to nudge them up. Okay, so we're creating like a leafy profile. Okay, so you can imagine as if you're looking through the actual shape. Right then, so with that, let's go ahead and bring in all of our other vectors. So I'm just going to come over here and we're just going to paste those cross sections in. So these are all the different cross sections that I'm going to be using when we get to the 2-rail sweep. So we'll come to that later on, but it will make more sense when we actually model that. So at this stage, as we've got all of our vectors, I think it's a good point for us to save our file. It's always a good practice to do that. So we're just going to save this and we're going to call this Birdie vectors. Okay, we'll save that out and then we've got a safe file there. Okay then, so to get started, we're going to start by creating some of the basic shapes for the bird to begin with. That's always good practice to kind of organise your component tree. So we're going to go up to the level here and we're just going to right click. We're just going to rename this one and I'm going to call this one Basic Bird. Okay. And we're going to start creating our shapes. So we're going to go straight into the 3D view. Okay, so you can see our vectors are all laid out here. And if you wanted to bring your bitmap up again, you can do so by switching on the bitmap. If you didn't want that there, that's not a problem. You can just turn that off. Equally, if you like to work side by side, so you can just see your model but also see the bitmap, you can do that as well. In which case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to maximize our 3D view and we're just going to jump straight in and we're going to look at creating some of the basic shapes for the bird. Okay, so I'm going to start with this shape here. I'm going to take that and we're going to go into this tool here to create a round component. Now, this is really super fun to use, and all we do is we assign a round profile by just simply pulling on some handles that we've got in the 3D view. So we're going to start by pulling on the angle, and this is so subjective. This is pretty much you just take a look and then twiddle around and see what it looks like. And if you wanted to make further adjustments, you can do that by increasing the shape. And really some nice handy things that you can see here is if I hover over this is the overall scale of our model. I can see the height of that. It's currently at 0.3. It's pretty good at the moment. That's looking okay, and I can come back and adjust all of the heights afterwards. At the moment, I'm just concerned about a very basic rough shape for now. In which case, I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to jump over to create our next component. Okay. Now, because I want this component to blend in with our existing component that we've just created, I need to make sure that I set the combine mode of this to merge so that it merges in. Okay, and you can see it's already created a shape there, and then all I do is pull on the handle and you can see how it's blending in there. It's looking pretty good. Look at it from this view, just using the right mouse key there just to twiddle my view. Alternatively, I could move the actual view cube and put it in different angles if I wanted to take a look at it from up the y-axis there, in which case let's just go to this sort of view over here, and I can see I've got a nice blend there. Okay, so you can see it's really smoothly blending in, which is exactly what we want. Okay, and that's why we create our vectors, so that they really overlap each other when we're working with natural forms, so we can get a nice blend between the two shapes. Okay, we're going to go up to the beak now, and we're just going to twiddle our view. The reason I twiddle it is so I can just see what it looks like looking up the y-axis, how it's interacting with the model that we've already created. Okay, I might just want to decrease that angle a little. That's looking pretty good. Just going to put that back into the top view there. So next up, we're going to take this vector here, and again, let's just give that a little bit of a shape for the leg. Okay, and we'll just twiddle that. That's looking pretty good. Okay, so I'm pretty much done with the basic bird shapes. Next up, I'm going to look at creating the stem and the leaves. And the reason why I'm kind of jumping now and we're leaving the legs of the bird out is because I want to create the background items first, so the stem. And then once I've figured out the height of the stem, we can then adjust the bird to then create the legs, so it looks as though the legs are in front of and behind the stem. So ideally we do need that stem there first. So to help keep our part organised, let's just go up here. We're going to insert a new level because we're working with a different element of my job, and it's just purely to help us keep organised. We're just going to rename this one, and we're just going to call this one Stem and Leaves. And whilst we're here, we're going to set the combine mode of this to merge. So anything that I create now in this level, so components will be added to this level, they'll automatically blend in with our Birdie. Okay then, right then, so we're going to start by looking at the stem to begin with. So we're going to look at using the 2-rail sweep. Okay, so this is a really nice, easy tool to use. So in order for us to use this, we're going to have to go into the 2D view, but we're still going to keep the 3D view visible. So just tiling our windows so we can see both views. We're going to look at creating the bottom portion of the stem to begin with. So what you need to do is you need to select one vector, shift and select the other vector, and you're going to go over into this icon over here where we can create a 2-rail sweep. And so the first part of the process is selecting your 2 vectors that you want as rails, and then you've got to assign them as rails. So we're going to use this option here to use selection. These green nodes that you can see at the bottom represent the start points. We can see arrows on either one of those rails. This is telling us the direction of travel. So they're both traveling in the same direction, which is exactly what we want. And then what we do is we assign a cross section. So we're going to look at assigning a rounded profile. So we're going to take this one over here, and then what we can do is go ahead and just press apply to take a look at that. Okay, so you can see what it's done is took that round profile and it's swept that shape through the 2 rails up to the top there. Okay, so you can see it's quite tall, but we do have the ability to apply multiple cross sections. So what we could look at is altering that by having a large profile along the bottom and then a flatter profile towards the top. So we're just going to reset that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our cross section and we're going to assign it to the bottom there by clicking on that, and you can see it's assigned it here. Then we're going to take this profile here and we're going to click on the end point to assign it there, and you can see that's actually changed colour. So we've got red to match the red cross section, we've got yellow node here to match the yellow cross section, and so what will happen is it will transition from this very rounded shape, and as it goes through linearly it's then going to transition to this flatter shape. So when I go ahead and press apply now, you should be able to see that. Okay, so you can see the height difference there. Really nice tool to use. You can see that the stem is coming above the bird's body. That's okay because I can look at adjusting the bird's body later on. I think we've got a nice height in there for the time being. Okay, so we're happy with that. So we'll start a new component, and then we'll take this vector here and this vector here, and then we're going to use selection. Okay, and we can see we've got the 2 rails there, and again we can look at assigning those cross sections. So we're going to go this kind of flatter shape and then into a smaller curve. So we'll take this one here, so it transitions into a very small profile. Go ahead and press apply, and we can see the effect of that there. And again we can figure out the heights, how the 2 parts interacted with each other afterwards. Right then, I'm going to move on to a leaf, and then we're going to do 2 examples, and then I'm just going to whiz through the rest of the examples because we're pretty much repeating the same process. But there's some things that I wanted to pull up and show you. Okay, so we're going to take this vector here, say use selection. You can see we're traveling from the bottom, both rails. That's really good. If you did find that one rail was pointing in the other direction, all you do is right click and use the option to reverse the rail. You can see that there, in which case we actually want it the original way, so they're both traveling from the same point. Okay, so we've got 2 rails. Now we're going to assign our cross section. We're actually going to take this nice curvy shape here, so we're going to select that like so, and then we're going to apply it like that. Okay, we're actually going to set that to merge to do that, and you can see what that looks like. We've got quite a bit of height in there, so if we wanted to we could actually scale that down to an exact height. So let's see what 0.2 looks like. Okay, that's still incredibly high, so let's try 0.1. Okay, bringing that down, and again we might want to just bring that right down, so we'll go with 0.5. Okay, so something like that, it's starting to come together. And actually, if we just switch on our bitmap, we can see the actual, where the stem or the center line of our leaf is, it actually marries up really nicely with the curvature that we've got in our cross section. So that's working out really nice there. Right then, so let's just go ahead and start a new component. We're going to take this vector here, shift and select this vector here. We're going to say use selection, and we're going to go with that same cross section over here, press apply, and we can see that there. Okay, so it's a nice cross section. However, if I switch on my bitmap, we can see the curvature where the stem is. I actually have a vector drawn in, which we're going to use the extrude tool, which I'll show you later on. It doesn't actually marry up with our cross section. So what I did was I actually drew out another cross section, which is this one over here, which has more of a board on the left hand side and a much smaller board on the right hand side. And so essentially all I did was I took this vector, we're going to node edit mode, and I just moved this node over to the right hand side. Okay, so if we try that, so we're going to take this, if we just select this vector here, I'll just come out there. Okay, we'll just clear the rails. Right then, so take this vector here, shift and select this vector here, say use selection, and then we're going to take this profile over here and press apply. You can see that's actually marrying up nicely with the actual bitmap itself. Okay, see that? Really nice. Okay, so I'm happy with what we've got there. Okay, so at this point I'm actually just going to kind of whiz through all of the other leaves and stems just to work through that same process of using the 2-rail sweep. Okay, so we spent a few minutes there just creating all of those other shapes. Right, and I'm actually just going to switch off the component visibility in the 2D view so we can take a look at our bitmap alongside our model. So we've got pretty much all of the basic shapes in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make a few adjustments to the shapes just so that we get the correct heights. Okay, so I'm just going to take this stem, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to close out the 2-rail sweep here. I'm going to select it. Okay, we're going to double click on that, and I'm going to go into the properties here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at applying a little bit of a fade. I'm going to fade from the top to the bottom. So we're going to set our first anchor point at the top. And you can see I've got this line being dragged out in the direction that I want to fade my component down. Okay, and it's going to do that at default of 50%, which is pretty good there. I'm kind of happy with that. So we'll close out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this one here, also going to look at doing the same thing. So we're going to apply a fade. So fade that from the bottom to the top, just a little bit like so. Maybe not too much. We can just maybe just not bring that down a notch. Okay, and we'll do that. And then finally what we'll do, just to then kind of finish off the heights there, is look at increasing the overall height of this bird. So we're going to go over into our components tab over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take these components here, so those 3, and we're just going to group them. Okay, so we're just seeing them as one entity. And when I select them, what I can do is I can use this option here to just increase the base height ever so slightly. And you can see just applying a very small 0.052, and that's ensuring that we bring that in front of the stem. So we do have a little bit, very small vertical height there, which is fine. But we're actually creating the illusion now. If I just switch off the vectors, we're creating the illusion now that the bird is absolutely in front of that stem just by adjusting the kind of fades for the stem along with the base height for the actual bird itself. Okay, so let's put that back into the top view there. We'll switch on our vectors again. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the birdie's claws, and we're going to work through the create rounded shape like we did to create the actual bird shape that we've got here. We're going to whiz through that, adjusting all the heights on the fly as we do that to ensure that various parts are in front or behind the stem that we've got here. Okay, so we're just going to zoom in over here, and we're just going to kind of twiddle our view, and then we'll just work through that. So let's just go back into the basic bird level. Okay, so we're going to the basic bird level, make sure that's the active level. The reason why I'm doing that is so any new components that I create now will be added into this level, just keeps everything nice and organized. Okay then, so there we have it. Right then, so we're just going to do a few more things in order to finish off our basic model. Okay, so first off, let's just come over here. We're going to take this component, and we're going to look at cropping it to this vector. So we're going to hold on Shift, select that vector there, and we're going to come over here. Okay, so we've got two options. We've got clear area of selected component inside vectors, or clear area of selected component outside. So we want to clear everything outside of the vector. So we're going to use this option here, and when I click on that, that's going to clip that for me, or cookie cut it, which is perfect. Also, I noticed that this leaf is a little bit behind the leaf that we've got here. We can see that because of the green there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at applying a very small tilt from the right hand side to the left hand side. I'm just going to apply a little bit of an angle, and you can see that as I'm increasing that angle, it's actually lifting that up just enough so it sits nice and in front, and it's defined, so it looks like this leaf is well away in the background, which is perfect. So the last modelling tool we're going to look at that we haven't explored yet is the Extrude and Weave tool. So we're going to look at the stem on this leaf here. Okay, so we just want to make it a bit more defined. We want to make it round, coming in from the leaf, and we want to create a bit more definition in that crease there. So similar to the 2-rail sweep, we're going to use the Extrude and Weave tool. And what this does is it allows us to create a shape based on one single rail vector and a cross section, or a series of cross sections. So this is going to be our rail, and this is the Extrude and Weave tool. Okay, and like the 2-rail sweep, we have to say, yep, use this as our selection. Start point is over here, that's brilliant, and then we just assign some cross sections. So I'm going to zoom in over here, and I want to use this cross section here, and then what we'll do is we'll use a smaller cross section to go at the end over here, like so. I'm actually going to make sure that we're in the stem and leaves level, so that the component that I create now will be added to that level. Now I'm going to go ahead and press apply. We should see that come through. Okay, so it's come through very subtly, and that's because it just doesn't have the height at the moment. We're actually going to set it to merge. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come out, and we're going to take that component. We're just going to raise it a little bit, okay, only ever so slightly. Okay, so something like that isn't too bad. So we're creating enough height there so that it looks as though it's an actual stem. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So at this stage, I'm generally happy with how all of the components are interacting, how they're blending into one another at this basic stage. And so I'm going to give this a save. I think that's a safe thing to do. So we're going to go to File, Save As. Okay, now this time, actually spelled vectors wrong there. This time I'm going to call this one Birdie, and then Basic Model. Okay, and then we're just going to save that. At least we've got access to that. And then the next step now is to add in the extra details of the bird, and then we can start thinking about blending everything together with some basic sculpting tools. Okay, so we're going to go into our levels up here. Okay, what we're going to do is we're just going to minimize this one, also minimize this one, right click, we're going to insert a new level, and we're going to rename this level, and we're going to call this one Bird Details. Okay, I'm going to set the combine mode of that to add because I want to essentially add on top of our basic bird level. Okay then, right then, so let's start by taking this vector here that represents the wing, and so again we're going to use this tool here. Again, I am just going to kind of whiz through this. Okay, let's just bring my vectors up over here. Okay, and then we're just going to pull a shape out like so. That's pretty good height there. Let's just come out of there, just undraw the vectors just so we can take a better look. Okay, it's looking nice. Okay, then we'll take this vector here. Again, what we'll do is we'll just raise that ever so slightly. So we don't want it too bulbous. Okay, so I can see that's quite bulbous there. So let's just reduce that down. So we've just got like a subtle look there. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Right, and we've got this cheek area here. So again, let's just raise that up ever so slightly just to give it a hint of a kind of cheek. I'm going to take this one here. We're also going to raise this one up, make that a little bit more defined. Zoom in. Let's take a look at the eye. Okay, so round. I don't want it too round. Okay, so what I could do is I could just look at flattening that off ever so slightly. So kind of flatten that out. Maybe increase the angle a little bit more. Maybe just shake off the flattening a little bit. Okay, so again, as always, you can see this is a very iterative process. Okay, so now we're actually just going to go in here. I'm going to look at creating a shape like so. I'm actually going to look at negating that, so we're going to subtract it. Perhaps we'll give that a bit of a flat shape as well. So just creating a hint of a pupil there. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So just put that back into the top view. What we can do is we can come out of here, and then let's just turn off the visibility of our vectors and just take a look at our part as a whole, just to check over the heights, ensuring that we're happy with what we've got there. I might want to just decrease this ever so slightly. So to edit a shape, okay, so with that selected, press E on the keyboard. It's going to take us back into that create round shape, and it's going to remember all those settings that we use. I just want to just nudge that off slightly, that's all. Okay then, right then, so I think we're at a stage now where we're pretty much ready to sculpt. So again, I'm actually going to save this. We're going to go to File, Save As. I can see I've spelt this one wrong as well. I'm not very good at pressing my keyboard today. And we're going to call this one Birdie Basic Model, and then we're going to put ready to sculpt. So let's just actually look to see if I'm missing any letters. That's perfect. Right, so we'll save that. So we've got a state now where we could always go back to if we wanted to make changes, because we're about to do some sculpting, and sculpting is going to take us into some permanent changes. Okay then, right then, so what we're going to do, we're going to start by perhaps looking at the stem. Okay, so let's go into our component tree. I'm just going to switch the Birdie details and switch the visibility of the stem and leaves, sorry, not the stem and the leaves off, the basic bird, okay? And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this level here, and I'm going to go back in. I'm going to use this option here to create a component from visible model. Okay, and what that does is it essentially takes a snapshot, so you can see that there. And then what we can do is we can take all of these original components and just switch off their visibility. So should we actually want to go in and edit the original components, we can do, they'll still be there, but I'm actually just going to edit this model as a whole. Okay, there's not too much to do here. So just going to maximise the view there, go into our design tab, and we're going to go into the sculpting tools. And all I'm going to do, it's not a lot, but all I am going to do here is we're just going to blend in some areas where the stem meets the leaves. So we're going to use a smooth tool, just knock down that strength ever so slightly. I'm just going to blend it like so. Okay, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of a blend here as well, a little bit of a blend at the bottom, and I'm just going back and forth. I'm just trying to remove those kind of creased areas. Okay, and then let's just toggle my view, so I'm pressing Control with my right mouse key just to move that up, and I'm fairly happy with what we've already got there, so I'm just going to go ahead and press OK, so I'm happy with what we have there. Right, then let's go to our component tree and let's just switch on the basic bird model. Okay, so again for this one, what I want to do is, again, let's just take all of those, and I actually don't need to do anything there, but what I am going to do is I'm going to just undraw the stem, go back to our design tab, and then here, if I go back to my components, I can see I have an odd component here, so this should actually belong to this here. So essentially what I should do is go back into this one, take both of those, and then look at sculpting this into this part. So to help keep everything safe, I'm actually going to duplicate that component. We'll just move that underneath here, switch that off, and then we're going to take those, and then let's just go into the sculpting tools like so. Okay, it's going to tell us it's going to be baked. That's fine, we're happy with that. And all I'm doing here is just smoothing some of this out where the that stem we created, we just want to smooth it so it blends in. Maybe increase that strength. Okay, so just softening that up a little bit like so. Okay, let's press OK there. We can take a look at that. Wonderful. Okay, so let's go back to our components. Okay, now let's just rename this so it's not too long. Just going to do that like so. Okay, we're just going to undraw the visibility of this level, switch on the visibility of the basic bird, and then we're going to do the same again. We're going to create a component from the visible model. I'm going to make sure that my basic bird model is the active level, and then when I click on that, it's going to be added to that level. You can see that there. I'm going to take all of these, let's just undraw them. Got my one component that represents all of those like so, and then what we're going to do is we're going to look at sculpting in some of the features that we've got here. Okay, so I'm actually going to switch on the stem and leaves so I can also see that at the same time, and then we're going to go into the design tab, and then with that selected we're going to use the sculpting tools, and then we're just going to do a very simple smooth over. So I'm just blending the tail in like so, softening that off the edges as well. I want to increase that. Then we've got a video all about sculpting if you've not tried sculpting before. Okay, so I'm just going to blend this in ever so slightly as well, so just removing the harshness there. You can see it's just nice and soft. And then at the bottom for the leg, let's just blend that leg in also, and we're also going to look at smudging that as well. So let's just go in there, smudge that over like so. So just pushing it in. It's like we're pushing virtual clay here. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of twiddle and pan my view, zoom in a little bit, alter my diameter, and I am just going to smudge together the areas where we've got parts of the claw that blend together. Okay, so it's just bringing everything together as if it was one part, and you can see that looks pretty good there. Okay, right then, so I'm happy with that, so we'll go ahead and press OK. So now we're going to look at sculpting the details on top of the birdie. So let's go back to our component tree. I'm going to switch on the birdie details level. We've got everything that we can see here. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at blending the kind of face details into the head up here. Okay, and I'm going to do a little trick here. So I'm actually going to keep that as it is on its own, and we're going to use the sculpting tools, and then we're just going to zoom in over here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to undraw the preserve transparency option and put my strength right down to 0 in this case. I'm just going to go over here. You won't see anything just yet, but I'm just giving myself a platform, because if I just uncheck show visible model, you'll see what I'm doing. So there's my platform, and so the idea is if I then add some strength in, I can then just smooth that off. I'm also going to check preserve transparency now. I'm just going to do this, and then hopefully when I turn the model back on, you'll see that we've got a nice blend there. Okay, and that's exactly kind of what I wanted. Okay, we're going to do the same for the top as well. So we're going to take this component here, I'm going to go into the sculpting tools. Okay, I'm just going to undraw the visibility of the model. And then what we're going to do is we're going to undraw the preserve transparency so that I can bleed onto the model itself, but with no strength there. I'm going to switch that back on so that I can then increase my strength, and then what I can do is I can just decrease the size of my brush and then just really soften this edge over here. Okay, so we're just softening that like so, and then what we should see when I turn the visible model on, you can see it's a much more subtle transition. So I'm happy with that, so you could go ahead and press OK. Right then, so the final thing that we can do is we can look at applying a texture. So to do that, let's just tile our windows. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take our bitmap. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to first off undraw the birdie details components, undraw all of these components just so that I can access my bitmap, and then we're going to come over here and we're going to use this option to create a component from selected or imported model. Okay, so that's what that would look like so. Okay, so in terms of my components, what I want to do is I want to take this texture, bring it into the birdie details level. Let's just switch that on, and we're just going to take that first off. We're just going to alter the height. Okay, so the overall height of this. Okay, so just going to bring it right down, just so we've just got a hint of that. And then what we can do then is we can then soften that. So let's just apply that like so. She's got a nice softness about it, like that. Go back to our components layer. Let's switch on the stem and leaves like so, and then we should have everything in place. So there is our finished model, and that's looking pretty good. It looks pretty much just like the image that we've got here. Okay then, so at this stage we can then go ahead and save that. So say file, save as, and then we'll call this one Birdie, and we're going to call that one Sculpt. Okay, as always, I spot things afterwards, so I just wanted to actually do a little bit of a tidy up using the sculpting tools to do my final sculpt. So let's just maximise our 3D view, and it's where the texture meets our 3D model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimise all of these. We're going to insert a new level, and we're going to rename this level, and we're going to call this one Birdie Finesse. Okay, and then with that we're going to create a component of the visible model, and then let's go back to our components, switch those levels off so we're left with just that one component, and in which case we can then use the sculpting tools. And I'm just going to come in here, and we're just going to just soften this up a little bit. Okay, so there we have it. Now what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to save this model out as a 3D clip file. So we're going to go to our components, going to right click and say export as 3D clip art. Okay, and we're going to call this one Birdie. Okay, we're just going to save that. It's going to save that as a .3D clip file. Press save. And then what we can do is we can look at importing that into any project at a later date as a standalone piece of clip art that we can actually access from our clip art tab. Okay then, so we're just going to switch ahead now to a file that I've created earlier. So I've imported in our 3D clip file, okay, so I've actually added the folder, my Birdie folder, and I can see all of the models there. So this is the 3D clip file, brought that in, kind of sized it around a frame that I created using 2 vectors and a moulding profile from our clip art tab. So this one here using the 2 rail sweep, and then created a flat base for the back. And that's pretty much the overall composition here. In terms of what we've got in terms of our toolpaths, so I'll set this up so we've got the model sat fairly in the middle of our material block that I'm going to cut into. So it's 1.2 inches thick. I'm working in a 7x7 square, ensuring that everything is safe and appropriate for my particular setup. And I've got 3 basic toolpaths: 3D roughing, 3D finish, and a profile toolpath. So 3D roughing, we're using a 1/4 inch end mill to preview that. So let's just take a look at that. Okay, so there's all of our steps, so you can see how it's cut that out there. And if you want to learn more about the 3D roughing toolpath, then I recommend that you take a look at some of our tutorial videos, the getting started videos that cover that in lots of detail. Then we've got the 3D finish toolpath, so this is using a tapered ball nose tool, a 1/32 inch tool, so it's quite small, so it's going to get lots of detail in there. And then if we go ahead and preview that, you can see the detail there. It's pulled out all of that detail. It looks pretty good. I'm very happy with that preview. And then finally, using this vector, we're creating a profile toolpath with some tabs to help hold that in place, just using a 1/4 inch end mill, and you can see the result of that there. Okay, so at this stage, what I do is I'll go and save out these toolpaths to a post-processor that my machine can understand. I think we should go ahead to the labs now and cut this out. Okay then, so everything's machined now, and having a closer look at the finished pass, you can see it's really pulled up lots of nice detail using that 1/32 inch bit. It only took just over an hour to do that, so I'm actually really pleased with the time and the speed at which it's done that, and the effects that we've got there. Now, I'm just going to do a little bit of manual cleanup, and that's purely just on the x-axis, okay? Y-axis is beautiful. X-axis, we've got a few fuzzies just on the frame part. So I'm just going to use a little sander, probably spend no more than 5 minutes cleaning that up. It's only just a few fuzzies. We'll do that, and once we've done that, then we can start to think about how we can finish that. I'm thinking perhaps a shellac, but we'll see what we've got in the cupboard, and then we'll go from there. there we have it. I love how it's turned out. It's got a kind of rustic vibe about it. It's sit nice in the kitchen. But ultimately in this session, what we've learned, 3 key points. First off is your vectors. Ensure that your vectors are pucker to begin with. Nice, smooth, clean vectors will give you really good models. Learn your modelling tools. We've got lots of tutorials available that cover each one of the modelling tools that I've discussed in much more detail. So take a look at those. And then finally, to give your model an overall finesse, take a look at the sculpting tools as well, just to bring everything together. And with those 3 steps, you can apply them to any 3D modelling projects that you might encounter in the future. So if you've got any questions on 3D modelling, let us know in the comments. We'd love to cover that in a future video. And if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you've not yet subscribed to our channel, then please hit that subscribe button to get instant updates on the latest videos that we'll be releasing. So thank you for watching and happy making.